Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm the therapist, Tess Brigham.
And I'm Brooke Brigham. I'm the attorney.
And today we are talking about a Netflix documentary that just came out recently called Return of the King, The Fall and Rise of Elvis Presley. And we're going to get into the details of the documentary and what they talk about, but essentially in 1968, Elvis made a huge comeback in his career when he did this NBC special. And so the documentary really talks about a little bit about his early roots, not that much, but just sort of what his career was before the special and how he got to this place and why that special was so important to Elvis and to his career, because it was a turning point. So I just want to start by this. What's interesting is because Steve was asking me, what are you guys talking about today? And I said, we're going to do Return of the King, this documentary about Elvis. And he was like, ugh, Elvis? Like, why are you doing Elvis? Now, this is Steve who's constantly trying to get me to do musical documentary, always like trying to get us to do any kind of documentaries that are about music. And about any of that. And so he's constantly like, why don't you do this and this and this and this? And I'm like, ugh. But this one, he seemed to get instantly sort of like, ugh, Elvis. And I was like,
he's the king.
I know. I'm like, well, hold on a second. About? Hold on. And then he starts getting into the whole thing of like Public Enemy, like, fuck him in, John Wayne. What's that line in Public Enemy's song, Fight the Power? Elvis is, something, something, something. And then Steve starts like reciting Public Enemy, lyrics, claiming that, I don't know, the whole thing was so weird. I'm like, what are you talking about? I said,
excuse me, he's the king of rock and roll. He introduced us to rock and roll. I mean, whether you like his music or not, like you can't dismiss the significance of this person.
Yes. And I think that what he was really talking about is something that is, again, this is a problem, right? Where, yes, it is very, very, that if we look at the story of rock and roll and music in general, it was, right, Black musicians coming up with the music, playing it, and then white recording artists stealing it, taking it, and running with it. And so I can understand that maybe Elvis symbolizes that, but yeah, yes and no.
But no,
I don't think he didn't create the system that was all flawed.
But music was segregated before Elvis. Elvis, he did cover some Black artists' songs, but he also had his own songs and was very creative in blending the two. He was very into gospel music and Black Southern gospel music. And that was what inspired him. And he infused his own love of that into, the kind of emerging rock and roll. I mean, it was very unique. I thought it was undisputed that he was the king of rock and roll.
Well, I think that there's a couple different things. I think that as we look back, I mean, I will say for me, my own journey, because, I loved Elvis when I was younger. I was a huge Elvis fan. And it was because I read the Priscilla book. I think it came out in like 1985 or 1986 or something. And Priscilla wrote a book called Elvis and Me. And where she talks about her life with him. And that's what got me very interested in him. And I think that since that time, as I think about that book and I look back on it going, this book is super problematic. Do you know what I mean? Like in my, 12-year-old brain, it seems super romantic how controlling he was with what she wore and what she didn't wear. And, like all this whole thing. And the way the book was talked about, it was, he met her when she was 14 years old, 14. And they claim that they never had sex until their wedding night because he had this whole Madonna whore kind of complex, though I've heard different stories that that's not necessarily true. But essentially she was 14 when they met. And then she was, I want to say 17, 18 when she moved into the mansion, into Graceland. And I think that he had a raging drug problem. I don't think he was faithful. I think all of it, but at the same time, so anyway, as I've gotten older, I kind of look back on that and I look at him a little bit differently. And I think that now, even 10 years after that, of like in the last 10 years, it's really been like, oh God, that was a really problematic book. And their marriage was weird. I can see him in a different way of being someone who really was this poor, naive, poor kid, not a lot of resources, not a lot of, help, and somehow finds him, has this talent and finds himself in into this place in this situation. And it just felt like he was just reacting to it in the moment. Like, I don't think Elvis had a lot of tools in his toolbox to manage what was going on with him. And I don't think there were a lot of people in his life that were really trying to help manage what was going on with him. I think he had a lot of enablers and a lot of people that were forcing him to do things.
Yeah. I mean, he grew up very, 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 very poor. His father was in prison for writing
a bad check. Like, how? And they said that the dad wasn't around most of his childhood. I'm like, from forging a bad check?
Yeah.
That's an entire lifetime?
I think it was more than that. But I mean, he was doing it because he didn't have any money. He's trying to feed his family. And then I think his mother had mental health issues, maybe some substance abuse issues. No, the guy came from like the bleakest of circumstances, and he was extremely talented, and people picked up on that. And he was exploited a lot. He was taken advantage of a lot by, managers, by doctors, by a lot of people did not have his back. And just as a postscript at the end, after we talk about the film, I just finished listening to the autobiography of Lisa Marie Presley that her daughter also contributed to it because she died before it could be finished. So after seeing that, I had all new different feelings about Elvis. It really humanized Elvis. And so, yeah, I mean, he's obviously a complicated figure.
Yes.
And did you know that this NBC special, this comeback special, was on June 29th, 1968? Your birthday.
Oh, that is my birthday, but you weren't even born
not
yet.
The same year, but the month
and
date. So,
but it didn't air till December.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it was filmed
in June.
But yeah, do you remember this when you had that because for years, because you loved Elvis, people would always give you Elvis stuff.
I know, it's so annoying.
And it kind of went on for too long.
Yeah, it did.
Anyway, somebody gave you an Elvis watch.
Yeah, Dad probably.
Yeah, and we were up in Ukiah, and it must have been around the holidays or something. And I remember it was snowing.
Oh, I remember this. I know what you're talking about.
Up in Willits, which is like maybe 30 minutes away, and we didn't see a lot of snow, so
we had to pack up into the car and go see the snow.
You and me and my friend Julie drove up there and pulled over on the side of the road and saw the snow, took pictures in the snow. And then when we got back home, you realized your watch was missing. And we figured, I don't know, correctly or incorrectly, that you lost it when we were up in the snow.
Yes.
And so we were going to go back and look for it. And it was you and me and Dad. And thank God Dad came, because we probably would have died in the snow.
Yeah.
Because we go out there, and of course, now it's really snowing. It's been snowing a lot more. And we get to the spot where we think we were. We don't even know. We can't even recognize it. And we tried to get out of the car to look for it. And the car was kind of spinning on the road.
Oh, God.
Starting to get really treacherous.
I don't remember any of this, but yeah.
And Dad said, okay, we're aborting this. Abort. We are going to die in this.
This stupid watch.
To get this watch. So the Elvis watch was lost to the snow.
It was. Never it was someone very lucky, hopefully, when in the spring, when the thaw came, were able to get it. And hence why I've never watched. I don't wear watches. I've never worn a watch. I've never because watches I always have so many bad situations with watches. So I just gave it up. But yeah, R.I.P. the watches. And I think that, and in this documentary, there's lots of people they interviewed, Priscilla Presley, and they interview, one of his background singers and some other people, but they interview Conan O'Brien, and we were trying to figure out what Conan O'Brien's, place in all of this is, if he was just a really big fan and he said yes to the documentary, or if he's one of the producers. But I think that, he says this at the end, which is we are, we put a lot on our celebrities. We put a lot on these people. We expect them to be uber human or to be something that they aren't. And I think that's the part that is tough, or you have to reconcile with the people that you love, which is, there is Elvis, the musician, and all of his talent and all of the things that he did and all of the things that he accomplished. And you can look at that and admire that. And at the same time, yeah, he's probably a crappy husband, drug addict, probably not the best person, I mean, like, had a lot of issues.
But why do you say it like that? A drug addict, not the best person. I mean, a lot of people...
I'm not saying being a drug addict means that you're not the best person. I'm just simply saying that I think that we tend to go in these extremes, and that he is all of those things, that he is that talented person that also really, my guess would be that really struggled a lot, and obviously struggled with a lot of fame and struggled with things, and that a lot of the choices and decisions of his career, he didn't necessarily make himself. And he felt, and that felt very scary. And I think he, just like Cody Brown, was very worried about, worried about poverty. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think right. And like that idea, I mean, I'm not saying that he is like, he's a bad person because he used drugs. I'm just saying that that he's a complicated person just like the rest of us, and that nobody does it perfectly and well, and that we're all complicated, and we put a lot of pressure on celebrities to do everything right all the time. That's
the thing, is that, like, I mean, it's hard to find a celebrity of this level who doesn't have a lot of issues, because it is such an unnatural way to live.
Yes.
Unnatural life. And you have so many people trying to get something out of you that, it's rare that you do come out of it being like normal and intact, or as normal as possible. So yeah, it's kind of, he didn't have that much of a chance.
No.
Honestly. So where do you want to start? I mean, the movie starts with him like rehearsing for and getting ready for this special, but I don't know if you want to go back to kind of...
Yeah. I mean, I think that what they do in the documentary, they sort of set the scene, right? Where here's Elvis. He is in rehearsals for this performance. He hasn't performed live in 7 years. He has not had a top 10 hit in 5 years. His career is in jeopardy. And really, there was a tremendous amount of pressure on him to give one of the greatest performances of his career. And, there was this real feeling of, okay, and apparently there was some story too about how Elvis called the director of the special and was like, I can't go out there. I can't do it. I'm not going out there. And he was already in the leather outfit. Like, I can't go out there. And, basically the director makes a promise and says, well, if it's all bad, we'll just destroy the tapes. And we can see, him kind of fumbling the first song and struggling and all of that. And so that's they sort of set the scene. And then they go back to 1954 when Elvis was 19 and released his first single, That's All Right.
Yeah. And I didn't realize that song was, I thought he wrote that song.
No.
It was a Black artist. I wrote his name down somewhere in my notes. But yeah, so even going back farther, what made Elvis very unique was that his musical style, it was influenced by, he grew up in Mississippi. He was born in Tupelo, Mississippi, very poor, used to like stand at the doors of these Black churches and listen to the gospel music. He loved that kind of music, and all of his original songs and his performances and all this stuff was informed by this love of gospel music. And so he was kind of fusing that with, I don't know, whatever artists were coming out at the time that weren't like the white milk toast kind of and that's how he fused, came up with, what we now call rock and roll. But
because music was very segregated at that time, right? You had this, you had BB King and these other artists, Little Richard on one side, and then you had this sort of milquetoast Pat Boone, and so it was very segregated. And America had a lot of fears. This is why parents were like, oh my God, with Elvis when he first came out, because, these white parents didn't want Black culture infecting white children. And what Elvis was doing was he was creating his own music and his own music of the time, almost, right? This, again, as we see all the time, like rebelling against what your parents think and what the status quo is. And like, wait a second, why is this music, why is everything segregated? And why can't there be a combination of the two? And and that was the whole Elvis the pelvis, because he was this first sex symbol.
Yeah, they tried to blame it on saying that, he was too suggestive in his moves and his dancing, but really it was just a racial thing. It was a prejudice thing. It was they didn't like that he was infusing, Black music and Black culture into his music, and so they used this Elvis the pelvis thing, I think, as kind of an excuse.
But he was like a real, like, I think the other thing too was that he was a real sex symbol, as opposed to Pat Boone, who are like, I'm trying to think, Frankie Valli, or I'm trying to think of all the men at that time.
All the rest of them,
yeah, that were very much cute, attractive. Rock Hudson, right? All cute and attractive, but not sexy.
Yeah, he was extremely sexy. He had a look, with the dark hair, and he kind of has like this, his facial features are just gorgeous. I mean, he was just really stunning looking.
Yeah.
Very, very confident. And people went crazy over him, and rightly so.
And he always wanted to be in movies because at the time, Frank Sinatra, I don't know, I like Frank Sinatra, but like, I wouldn't call him sexy.
No.
I think maybe some people would, but that it made sense for him that he wanted to do movies. Elvis did before he even went into the military, but before he was drafted, he did this movie King Creole, and he only did it because he heard James Dean wanted to do it. So he, him acting and going in this movie direction wasn't an insane idea. It was very common. It was just a matter of what direction to go in. And then, what I'd always read was that Elvis didn't have to go into the military. Like that he very easily could have gotten out of it. And that it was very much Colonel Tom Parker as part of his career that said, no, you're not going to try to get out of this. We're not going to finagle our way out of this. You're going to stay in. Yeah. Is that the story you heard?
I didn't even realize that they had the draft in 1958, but they had the draft from 1948 to 1973. So, so when did Tom Parker come in?
Probably around like 50, right? Early 53, 54. Like he was, because it sounds like Elvis
56 was his first TV appearance.
And I think that's the thing. I think that he was performing around, I think Colonel Tom Parker, who I don't think was a real manager. Wasn't he like a circus? Didn't he like run a circus or run a vaudeville thing?
Yeah, Carnival Barker type.
Yeah. So I think he just kind of was like, maybe I can. And I do think that Colonel Tom Parker did have a good business sense. He just wasn't an artist. He wasn't, I think he saw everything in terms of dollars and cents. And again, I think here's Elvis, this poor kid. Someone's coming in saying, I'll take care of you, sign on the dotted line, just listen to me. And it sounds like a lot of the things that Colonel Tom Parker were telling him to do worked really well. So, I should stay in the military. I should go and I'll get drafted.
Yeah.
Okay.
It worked, but it cheapened everything. Like they talk about how the Colonel was all about merch. He invented merch.
He invented merch.
He put Elvis's face on everything, and he started the merch thing. And so, he saw Elvis's merch. He didn't see him as an artist. And so the thing about going into the Army was kind of a stunt, at the height of his career.
Well, and also, which I thought was really smart, was the Colonel had him record a ton of music before he had to ship out. So the entire 2 years that he was in the military, he,
releasing music.
He was releasing music. So if you weren't paying attention, you would think like, oh, okay, here's Elvis. Here he is out and about. The other thing too is I think his mom died right before he left. I think that, and again, I think this is the part of the Colonel Tom Parker, like not kind of getting like what is best for this person in this moment in time versus no, dollars and cents. Like, I don't care that your mother had just died. I don't care about this. Like, this is part of our plan for your image. So go. And I guess when he got to Germany, this is also a kid. How much did he travel outside of the US when he went to Germany? And he was really alone. That's what they talked about, like how alone he was and how lonely he felt. And I think he was surrounded by people. Cause I remember, when Priscilla talks about meeting him and how that all came about, and, someone saw her in some like club or cafe or something.
He was in the Eagles Club, which was like all these like bases and embassies and stuff. They have like these little cafes, places like where Americans can congregate. And
but I don't think Priscilla was even there. I think Priscilla was somewhere else. Someone spotted her. So he had like cronies.
No, Elvis's friend approached her.
Oh, okay.
So she's sitting in the Eagles Club writing letters back home to her friends. And she's 13 or something. And so this guy comes up to her, Elvis's friend approaches her and says, hey, would you like to meet Elvis? And she was like, well, yeah, I guess so. And I'm not sure how long after that they actually first met, but to me, it seemed like that relationship from what she described, I don't think it was sexual. I think she was like his best friend or something. Like he didn't have a mother, no one else is talking to him about his feelings. And here's this young girl who's very sensitive and will sit there and listen to him. And she talked about how, even after he got out of the Army, I think she was still over in Germany with her family, and they would just talk all the time, and he would tell her all of his deepest thoughts and fears and whatever. Yeah, she was very beautiful and whatever, and then he had her move in when she was 18. She quickly got pregnant within like a couple months.
They got pregnant on their wedding night.
On the wedding night, right. And so they really never had a marriage. You know what I mean? They really never had... I don't, it doesn't seem like it was like she was just kind of his best friend, and then they got married and had sex and had a baby.
Yeah. Well, and also I think, it wasn't a marriage of equals.
No.
And it's funny because, Chris Rock has all these jokes in his latest special about like dating younger women versus dating women your own age and all that. And I get it. I really do, because when I was 22, 23, I would listen to all these men that were talking to me and and I would care and all this. And I know now today, I'm like, oh, shut up. Like, I have no time for you to complain to me about your life. And I think that's really true. There's something about that young female, and why men tend to go for these younger females, is because it's beyond the youth part. It's almost that desire. Yeah. Desire and willingness to listen and kind of put up with it. Because I think someone your own age might be like, get over yourself. Let's go. I got bills to pay. I got things to do. And no, that's interesting. I don't ever want to talk about anyone's looks, but Priscilla Presley, God damn it, she was gorgeous. Like hands down, I think one of the most beautiful women ever. Just flawlessly beautiful. And it drives me crazy that woman let a knife get near her face.
Yeah, gorgeous. She got a really, really bad facelift when she was pretty young.
Yeah.
Like maybe in her 40s. She got this botched facelift. I think it looks a little better now.
It's looking better now, but it's been bad for a while. And even still, when you see those old photos of her and those big blue eyes and oh my God, the dark hair, she was, stunning. Absolutely stunning.
I know. She never should have touched her face.
Oh, no. So if you look like Priscilla Presley, do not touch your face. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Because God, I just, so beautiful. So beautiful.
So when he came back from Germany, he had this thing where, I don't know, somehow Frank Sinatra had to, give him his blessing or something because he was in charge of show business. That's why they call him the chairman of the board.
Yeah.
And I also thought it was interesting that, he was exposed to all this European opera music, which really influenced his style of singing. And it was more like adult leaning music as opposed to the kind of, teenage, whatever. And he wanted to do that because, again, Elvis really was an artist. Like, he would get inspired by these things that he heard. And so they played a clip of him singing that. I forget the name of the song, but it's absolutely beautiful. I think it was released, but no. We got to get back to these dumb movies and these terrible soundtracks. And he did that for like 10 years or something.
And I think this is a bit of how things have changed for Elvis and like his viewpoint in our world. As I feel like we've come, I think that he was revered for a long, long time. And then there was this evolution of like, wait a minute, he stole things from people. And this is just the stories that were told. And it's been interesting to see sort of this new evolution of looking at him with the movie 2 years ago and this one and some of the books that have come out, which is, really being able to celebrate him as a musician. Because if you watch the special, he's sitting there playing the guitar, singing. Yeah. And I think he's never been seen.
Yeah.
I think that he has never been perceived as someone as a serious musician. It's like, no, he actually is. He is a serious musician. And, because we have sort of bastardized or, his image has been spun in all these different ways, he's become a bit of someone like a teeny bopper kind of joke.
Yeah, like the Colonel really kind of ruined his career there for a while. Those movies were so stupid, but they made a ton of money. And it was like, again, that went back to his insecurities about being poor, so he felt like he had to do them and they were making a ton of money for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think the other problem too was they mentioned that he wanted to do some serious shows. He wanted to do serious movies. And then apparently he released like 2 movies where he did not sing and he didn't get the girl in the end and no one went to go see them. And I think that was like this moment in time of, right. Again, I think the Colonel just went right back to, see, that's not working. That's not working. That's never going to work for you. So let's go back to, doing the musicals, making it a lot easier. And in 1961, he got into this 5-year contract where he had to make a certain number of musicals and they were just terrible. Yeah. And they got worse and worse and worse and worse. But he was making, I didn't realize this, he was making more money than Cary Grant, Gregory Peck, all these people.
The highest paid movie star in America.
Yeah.
And they also said that Elvis felt beholden to the Colonel because he felt like he owed him his career and that he was kind of trapped. And, again, his insecurities about not having money and all that kind of stuff. It was just like a perfect storm that kept him in this cycle of making these terrible movies. But at some point it stopped.
Well, yeah, the contract, he finally fulfilled the contract to the point where like the last music, I mean, the last movie he did was, they would, it would take about 3 weeks to shoot. They would do 1 take each and he had to sing Old MacDonald.
Yeah, it got really bad. And also then the music scene just, everything changed. So 1963, Priscilla turns 18. She moves into Graceland. 1964, the Beatles come on the scene. And they show that when the Beatles met Elvis, they were so starstruck that they couldn't even talk.
Yeah.
Everyone was starstruck. And the music began to change. The racial tension of the 60s in Vietnam, the music started getting deeper. I mean, Elvis's music was like this silly sort of bubblegum. Not that he wanted to really be doing that, but that's what was out there, even though he had the capacity to do a lot more. Yeah, he could have had the capacity to do anti-war songs because he actually, he did write songs and perform songs that were about important things, but that was just not part of the Colonel's plan. Elvis wasn't like a political figure, but everything was changing. You have Bob Dylan and all that.
Well, and I think that's the other part of it too, is that, right, like your manager is someone that it's not just about money and protecting your interests, right? It's about bringing out the best in you and really thinking about what makes sense and what do you want and all of this. And I think that the Colonel very much probably said to Elvis, like, don't talk about politics. Like, you're not political.
Yeah.
You're not political. You're not Bob Dylan. No. Talk about this, talk about that. And I think it was one of those things where you start to go down that road and you don't know how to get out of it. You don't know, right? Like, because he was so young, like, oh, okay, this is what I should do. And it wasn't until much later that maybe he realized, like, wait a minute, I didn't have to listen to this guy. But he was the original rebel. He was the first, rebel to come in, but suddenly here's Bob Dylan and his music is poetry.
Yeah, well, he did release that in 1967, that song, How Great Thou Art, was like a gospel, had a lot of gospel roots in it. And those were the only Grammys he ever won. He won 2 Grammys. They were all for gospel music from the album that song was on. So yeah, they should be cultivating that.
Yeah. Psych Legal Pop will be back after these messages. But yeah, so he finally, I guess his last film was this one called Easy Come, Easy Go that completely bombed. Apparently, basically people are like, there's no appetite. No one wants these Elvis films anymore. Like the songs weren't doing anything. So he was at this crossroads. Like he got married. They had had Lisa Marie in 1968. God, I didn't realize that Priscilla was 21 when she had Lisa Marie. So crazy.
And I think that this is interesting. So basically, Priscilla Presley is interviewed. She's in this movie. And she says that Elvis was really excited to be a dad. That was his reaction. Her reaction was she was upset that she wouldn't be able to do stuff with him anymore. Like go to
they had
Las
just gotten
Vegas
married.
And
yeah,
and live that kind of lifestyle. And she's like, oh, well, you don't want to have a baby with you in Las Vegas. And so this is what, because no one likes his movies anymore. Like, that's over. That's why they had to. So we're in 1968, and it's like they got to get him back on the stage.
Now, I didn't realize. I always thought this special was just supposed to be him, a guitar, and performing. But I guess apparently the original concept of it was to have a bunch of skits, right? To do kind of a variety hour.
I thought it was all of it. I thought it was part, the skits, sort of like with the songs, with the sets, and not a live audience. Those were filmed on a sound stage. But then they had this live audience, like kind of in a round, and he performed on the stage, both alone, and then he had that jam session.
Yes.
Because I don't know whose idea this was or who overheard.
I think it was the director's.
Yeah, so he basically overheard every day Elvis and his band in the dressing room just jamming. And he's like, this stuff is good. Like, we need to get this out here. So they put them all on the stage in the round, and they just kind of improvised. And it was like some of the best music I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It was so like powerful, and like that was Elvis at his finest. And it's like, didn't we see more of this? Like,
well, and it was also him ad-libbing, making jokes, telling stories,
being charming.
Yeah, and I think that's probably how these jam sessions were. But I think that was the thing, right? I think that the director really got Elvis and got like, hey, wait a second, why don't we do this? Because he was struggling with the skits. He was just like, he was having a hard time with it. Because he talked about towards the end of his acting career, when he was doing all these movies, he talked about how he started to become physically ill, like physically sick. And so there's almost this piece of, I can imagine like having to go do those skits again. Like you must feel like, oh God, I'm back to doing this.
They were dumb. Yeah. And he got ready, he started training, lost 25 pounds, to do this thing. And he looked hot.
He looked really good.
Black leather matching, pants and jacket.
Must have been really hot.
He
Sweaty.
really looked good.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he was very, very nervous at first. It took him a while to warm up. But Priscilla said this was the first time she'd ever even seen him perform.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is interesting when you think about it, where you think, wow, she really came into his life during like a really hard time of his career. And yeah, I'm sure she saw sort of one side of him. And I think it was like, oh wow, yeah. He is really
because
amazing.
When he came on the scene, she was like 10 or something. So yeah.
Yeah. And so the special aired on December 3rd, 1968. It was the highest rated show that NBC had that year. 42% of the US watched it. Getting those kinds, that's the part I was so like, oh my God. When you think about that, that's what big network numbers, that was what it was like when these things happened. Who Shot JR and the finale of MASH, like big deals because there was nothing else to watch. Like everybody, if you were home watching TV that night, you were watching this Elvis special.
There were 4 stations.
Yeah. But how incredible that is and how many people saw it, but it was really the beginning. So this is what I was saying about Conan O'Brien. He talks about how, that this allowed him to have this third act of his career, and that we need to have empathy for him because we tend to turn celebrities into objects and then project a lot onto them or have expectations of them. And again, it always comes back to, right, the artist and the art,
Yeah. And they had Bruce Springsteen.
Yes.
That did a lot of the commentary, and that makes sense, because, someone who's musically minded from a young age, and seeing Elvis come onto the scene, and he obviously really admired him. They also had Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins, and his connection is he's very good friends, or was very good friends with Lisa Marie, and he produced a lot of her music. And then they had Baz Luhrmann, who produced the movie that was done. What's that guy's name? Austin Butler, the very stylized Elvis movie that came out a couple of years ago. That is a great movie.
I'll have to watch that.
It's beautiful. It's a great movie. And they had Darlene Love, who was one of his backup singers. Who else did they interview?
Well, they interviewed one of his close friends, this guy, Jerry Schilling. And this guy, if you read anything about Elvis, like he was all over Priscilla's book. This guy was like truly, I think, one of his best. This guy's been with him from day one.
Yeah, I thought he became his manager, like after the Colonel.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. But I know that he had a core group of friends. One of them being like a cousin of his, and I think Jerry, or maybe Jerry's related to him in some way, shape, or form, but like everyone, he had like a core group of people, and Jerry's one of them. And maybe Jerry was the youngest because he's the only one left. I don't know. But, and that's the other thing too, is when you really stop and think about Elvis, and when he died, he was 42. Like I think about that now. Now, when I'm reading the book, when I'm, 12, 42 seems ancient. Like it seemed, obviously I knew it was young, but it also seemed like, that's a long life, right? And it's just crazy to think about, oh my God, 42. That's nothing.
Yeah. Well, and I remember the day he died. I can't remember where I was, but I remember I was somewhere out in public and someone said Elvis died. It was 1977.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It was really tragic. And, Lisa Marie, the autobiography, she had her own drug problems, but they talk a lot about Elvis's drug problems. And it was mostly dictated by these doctors who told him, because, he had this crazy schedule.
Yeah.
He had a hard time sleeping. And they're like, well, take these to go to sleep and then take these to wake up.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, well, they're prescribed by a doctor.
Yep. Yep.
And, nobody saw anything wrong with it. I don't think Elvis was really a drinker.
No, I don't think so.
No, he just used these pills to and he of course, got addicted to them because they're addictive. Use. And he started out just trying to be able to get some sleep and then wake up in the morning.
Yeah. Or like, okay, you have an all night shoot, you take this, and then, oh, I'm wired. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Sad.
We'll talk about, let's talk about the autobiography. So how was it? How was Lisa Marie's autobiography? Because she's also in her own ways, a tragic, she's got her own stuff and a tragic figure.
Yes. Her life story, I think, is crazier than his.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I listened to the audio book.
And I'm sorry, who reads it?
So Julia Roberts reads the part that's in Lisa Marie's voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then Riley Keough, Lisa Marie's daughter, kind of supplements it.
Mm-hmm.
She reads parts because here's what happened. Before her death, she asked Riley if she would help her write her autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
And she said yes. And they started by, there's all these audio recordings, and they put some of the clips of the audio recordings in the Audible book.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sat down with, I'm not quite sure who she was working with, but there's all these audio interviews on tape where she's just kind of talking. She starts talking about her life and talking about different things. But apparently there was like this 10-year period of her life where that she just did not talk about, like a really painful part of her life. She really didn't record anything about that. So Riley kind of filled in the blanks there.
And what was it? What were those 10 years?
I think it was basically kind of like the last 10 years of her life.
Oh, after her child died?
Yeah, well, her child died in 2020.
Oh, okay.
Even before
that, things were bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lisa, this woman's life is so tragic. Anyway, the book is called From Here to the Great Unknown. And I think that her daughter did an excellent job of doing this. And
mm-hmm.
she and her daughter were extremely close. Her daughter witnessed all of this. She
mm-hmm.
knew all of it. And she's very mature. She's like 45.
Yeah, I was going to say, Riley is like the most together, mature person I think I've ever seen.
The most mature person in the family. Yeah. And very well spoken and very able to communicate and empathize with people, but also really see what's going on. And she just did an excellent job of putting this all together with very little, it's not like Lisa Marie had written down this big, and she was just finishing it up or cleaning it up or editing it. She really had to almost reconstruct it from scratch. So
yeah.
Anyway, a couple of takeaways from this. Lisa Marie absolutely adored her father, and he adored her, and he treated her like, gold.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And she loved him and felt so good just growing up at Graceland. Like she could basically do whatever she wanted to, but it wasn't like she was a spoiled brat. It was just sort of like, this is Lisa Marie's home, and, do whatever you want. She talks a lot about riding around the place in golf carts and, just kind of little mischiefy type things. And she loved it there and was so, so, so happy. And a lot of it is talking about how happy she was there and her relationship with Elvis. And, he never got mad at her. I mean, it was just, I don't know if that's good or bad, but she was not close to her mom, at all, really through maybe towards the later part of her life. But
well, that's so hard too, because Priscilla was so young when she had her.
Yeah.
And I think that, as I learned from the book, Priscilla, she had her own affairs. She went through her own stuff, in the 70s, when I'm sure, she had an affair with her karate instructor and all of the, her trainer and the horse riding guy and, all these people and I do wonder too, how much I'm not saying Priscilla wasn't a good mother. I'm just saying that I wonder if Priscilla was distracted,
Yeah, she didn't seem very present. She barely really talked about her mother during the time when they were all living together in Graceland. And then, of course, in 1977, Lisa Marie is the one who finds her father dead.
Because that was very different in the Elvis and Me book. That's not how they told it there, but okay.
Oh,
interesting.
No, she says she found it because they had the upstairs of Graceland. It's just Elvis's room and then her room. And no one's really allowed to go up there when they do tours and stuff. Nobody can go up in there. And every morning, I think she would kind of go and see if the door was open or like look in and see. And she was the one who found him. She was 9 years old.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden she had to go live Elvis and Priscilla had already been divorced.
Yes.
And she was already going back and forth between California and Graceland. And she hated going to California. She never wanted to go. She always wanted to be at Graceland. Then, of course, he dies and she has to move full time with her mom in California. And like her mom was putting her in these schools. She started very young, like using drugs. The mom had a super creepy boyfriend.
Oh, Priscilla?
Priscilla had this creepy boyfriend for a really long time. And Priscilla didn't sound like a good mom to me at all. I mean, she was very financially savvy, though. She got right in there and she made sure that everything was preserved and the licensing and that all of this was saved for Lisa Marie. And so she was very smart and savvy about the financial part, but she was just kind of living her own California life. And, she would put Lisa in these boarding schools and she would get kicked out. And she was doing all kinds of different drugs at a very young age. And then Priscilla became a Scientologist.
Yeah. This is what I want to know about is so it started with Priscilla, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And so then she started taking her to the Scientology Center in Los Angeles. And actually, strangely, the Scientology Center, at first she had problems and she kept getting kicked out. Apparently they had, you could just go and drop your kids off there. Scientology Center.
Yeah.
Like if they were bothering you, and you drop them off there and, the Scientologists would try to get him off drugs or
well, because the Scientologists don't think that they think kids should be treated the same way adults should be.
Yeah.
So it's awful for kids. Yeah.
But it did actually help Lisa Marie. She actually did benefit from it. And then she's just stopped doing hard drugs at a certain point in her teenage years. So then, she goes through, just kind of her teenage years and her young adult years. And, she had a very crazy life, and she had a lot of money. So she was always going here, going there. And even when she was older and she had her own money and her own kids, I don't think her kids sounds like they didn't really go to school much. It would be like, oh, let's go to Hawaii for a couple months. They had a house in Hawaii. They had houses all over. They say, oh, let's go to Amsterdam. Let's go live in Amsterdam for a couple weeks or you know what I mean? They were always doing all of this stuff. And so then she meets the father of her children, Danny Keough, and
they're young, right?
They're very young.
Yes, that was the other thing.
When she had Riley, I think she was only 21.
Yeah, just like mom.
Just like her mom.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they had even though they got divorced fairly early on, they always had a very strong relationship and were in each other's lives, and they even lived together. He's the one who found her when she went into cardiac arrest, and he tried to resuscitate her and all this kind of stuff.
And they had two children, Riley and the boy
Benjamin,
who passed away. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was marriage number one. Okay.
Yeah. So then what happened was, so then Michael Jackson, this was one of the most revealing parts about the book. Michael Jackson, who had been obsessed with her for years and had wanted to meet her. And in fact, he invited years ago, before that he had invited Priscilla to have lunch with him. And when she showed up, he was disappointed because he thought that she was going to bring Lisa Marie. Lisa Marie was only at the time, I don't know, 8 years old or something.
Oh, God.
And he wanted to meet her. So over the years, he had been trying to meet her, and they finally started talking on the phone, and they struck up this friendship. And then she started to go and see him, and she said that they would bare their souls to each other. They would talk. Started out platonically, but they were spending all this time together. And finally, he says that he wants to marry her.
Mm-hmm.
And she also said that the whole thing about like him with his high pitched voice and all that, that's fake.
Mm-hmm.
That he doesn't really talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
That he's totally different if you're just one-on-one in person. And so she left this guy. She left Danny Keough.
Oh, she left him for him. Oh, yeah. I thought they had already divorced.
No.
Or broken up already. Okay.
No. She left him, and then she was 100%, absolutely totally in love with him.
Mm.
And, they just had all this fun together. She said she never saw anything, they stayed at Neverland sometimes.
Uh-huh.
And, they never saw anything weird. All the stuff about the child molestation, all that stuff, they didn't see any of it. That doesn't mean anything, but
it just means it wasn't exposed to her. So did I hear something that he was a virgin? Or no?
I think so.
Was that wrong? Okay.
No. I think that's right.
When they met, and that she was his first?
Yeah.
And he was how old at this time? I want to say he was like 30. Right?
She was, I don't know how much older he was than her, but he was like at least 10 years older than her.
All right. I got to Google this now.
Yeah. So
crazy. Anyway. God, do you remember all that? Like, it's just so crazy to think about, like, how insane that was. Like, Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis Presley's daughter, marries Michael Jackson. And, Michael Jackson's very talked about in the news and blah, blah, blah. I just remember that. And I remember Priscilla talking about like didn't even know they had gotten married, but all of a sudden started hearing helicopters and like, uh-oh, something's going on here. Just all of it. And then them making out at the Grammys and all that. That was so bizarre.
Yeah. No, it was. And people were also questioning if that was a real relationship.
Yeah.
And it was definitely a real relationship. But then, of course, what ended it was that Michael Jackson had such a raging drug problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that, he had his own anesthesiologist, as we know.
Yes.
Who kind of traveled with him. And so when he really, really wanted to have kids with her, and she had the presence of mind to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea. Because she did go on and have 2 more kids. It wasn't that she didn't want more kids. I think she just knew if she had kids with him that he would want to have complete control over the kids.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Yeah, she wasn't going to do that. So, it's a lot. I mean, ultimately, she married Nicolas Cage for a couple of years. Then she married this guy.
Oh, so he was, Michael Jackson was 35 years old when he married Lisa Marie. So Michael Jackson was 35 and she was 25. So she was still very young. That's wow.
Yeah.
So they broke up because of his drug problem. Was that what she said? Okay.
Yeah. So then she married this guy, Michael Lockwood, who was a guitarist and a music producer, and they had twin girls. They broke up, and then this is what really ended it all. Then what happened was after her, she had a C-section with her twins. She got hooked on opioids that she, started taking in the hospital, and it got so bad that she was taking like 80 pills a day.
And that was the other thing with her father. Everyone always makes fun of Elvis, like dying on the toilet, but it was like because all of those opiates make it really hard. It gets you very constipated. And that's one of the biggest things that happens to drug addicts is that your system, it can't operate.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then she heard that, if I do cocaine, that'll help me get off the opioids. So she started doing cocaine, and then and all this time she did do some stints in rehab, but she would always leave early. She was having a lot of physical things. She wouldn't go to the doctor. And then her son committed suicide in 2020 at 27 years old. And Riley basically said that she just kind of gave up after that. Like, she didn't want to be here. She died of a broken heart.
Yeah, I'm sure she did.
Yeah, Riley talked about it as if she knew this was inevitable. Like, she kept hoping that, she would get clean, or she was begging her to go to a doctor because she was always in so much pain. She was having all these issues. And she had very serious health issues compounded by all this drug use. And and then she died. And it's just, believe it or not, there's even more to it. This is like a Cliff Notes for
Wow. I think I have to check out this book.
I think you should.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
I finished it in a couple days. I just listened to it like on my commute and like on, just whenever, because you're just like, okay, and then what happened? She had a crazy, crazy, crazy life because of, she had access to all this money, and then she was who she was. And
well, and also being the only daughter, like this is the king of rock and roll. He's this very significant person. Then he has one child, and it's like, I think that's the part I always felt for her, like being the only one and sort of having to carry this. And having, I can imagine, right? Graceland, I don't think Elvis was like a hands-on dad in the sense that he was like, okay, Lisa Marie, let's get up and go. I think she had a very unstructured life at Graceland. I think she had a very unstructured life when she was with her mom, except when she was sent off to these boarding schools. And that's the other thing. These boarding schools and rehabs are very, very structured. And it's very hard for people, and I can understand the desire for Scientology because the core of what they teach you in Scientology is like cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not, that's how they hook people, because it's like this stuff does help, how you think about things, how you feel about things, like changing all of that. And I'm sure all of that was important and significant for her, but it's that same tragic thing of she was born with all of these expectations and of like who she was and who she should be. Yet at the same time, there was zero expectations to actually do anything, right? No expectation to go to school, no expectation to finish, right? And it sounds like she didn't put that on her own kids. And I think, didn't. And I think Riley sort of exemplifies the oldest daughter role and being the one that keeps it all together and being the parent.
Yes,
everybody.
She did. She had to parent her mother, her brother. She was just always kind of the most rational, reasonable response. And I think the fact that Danny Keough was always involved was also very stabilizing, because he was, he is a little flaky, but he was a stable person, and he really loved and cared about. They all lived together, all of them, for most of their life.
Yeah. I thought she and Danny were together a lot longer, but I guess not.
No, I
didn't realize she was 25 when she married Michael Jackson.
Yeah, no, well, I think she met him when she was like 17 or something, but then they didn't become serious for several years. And then right away, and then she started having her kids, and it was all very crazy and fast. And and she never had to, her life was never stable. She could always run away from her life. When things got too much, she'd be like, well, let's go here. Let's go live in Japan.
Yeah.
So like stuff like that. And because she had money, she could do that.
And she was engaged a lot and married 4 times. Her and Nicolas Cage, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like, she had these very high profile marriages. I think all of it, right? You're right. Like, she never was forced to ever stay and kind of deal with it. And even in rehab, that's a good example of someone. A lot of people have to go into rehab and have to stay, because if not, they'll get fired from their jobs.
Right.
And so in some ways that actually helps people, because it pushes them to stay much longer. And then they finally things start clicking, and they start to go, oh, okay. But that's the problem. There were no stakes for Lisa Marie. What stakes did she have?
Yeah.
And I do know, I remember when she released that album, she's had a couple albums, right? But her first one was very popular, and she had some hits, and but again, being compared to her father, and oh my God, she's dancing just like her dad, and the sneer, and blah 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 blah. It just, I felt for her, because I was like, God, this is a lot of pressure to, like, you just want to release some music, and now it's being looked at like that. And I could see how you would get stuck in this place of, well, there's so many expectations on me, so I'm not going to produce anything. And then what do you have? Well, these marriages, your kids, the marriages, the traveling, and yeah.
Yeah. It's really something. I've never heard a life story quite like hers.
Was the son, her son deeply depressed? Did they talk a little bit about what was leading up to all that?
Well, he was a heavy drug user and drinker. And again, because he didn't have to, she had no expectations of him. She just wanted him to be with her. She always wanted her kids to be with her, hang out with her, be her family, and just, always be around her. And so, these kids never went to school. They had no pressure on them to achieve anything or do anything. And I think he just kind of lived like he spent a lot of time in Hawaii. They had a house there. I think he just kind of did his own thing, and he was doing drugs and alcohol, and he maybe did have some mental health issues. I think they were kind of surprised by this. Like, I don't think they saw it coming.
Yeah, I mean, in 27 is such an interesting age, as we know. It's a very significant age. There's some people believe, right, things happen to us in nines. But there's something about 27. A lot of people die,
famous people
die at 27, but there's something about, I had my quarter life crisis at 27. There's something about age 27 that is interesting for people, because it's very much that place of, you're no longer, right? You're no longer a kid. You're no longer young. You're not quite 30 yet. And it's a weird place to be, because you're kind of caught in between two places.
Yeah.
So it's very tragic. And I mean, depending on what you believe in the afterlife, they're all reunited. Elvis, Lisa Marie.
Yeah.
Benjamin.
Yeah. And Gladys
together again, 4 generations. But it's interesting when you think about that, like these 4 people, family, one generation after the other, tragedy, death early, all of it.
Well, Riley talked about how Lisa Marie was very intuitive and in touch with, she's very spiritual, but not just spiritual. It sounds kind of generic, but she knew things about the universe. Like she had these certain senses, and she would say to her, she's like, I have one child here with me on earth, and I have one child that I'm not with out there. And she felt very unsettled by that. And, she kept his body in her house for 2 months after he died.
I heard about that.
Yeah. Because she just wasn't willing to, let it go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I highly recommend this. It's very interesting. Lots of information.
The autobiography.
Yes. Yeah. It's called From Here to the Great Unknown.
And I thought this documentary, I have to say, I didn't know what to expect with this documentary. I thought it was, and I felt like, oh God, I already know a lot about Elvis. Like, what more am I going to learn? But it is interesting because it's framed, even though a lot of the things that they talked about weren't like, oh my God, surprising. It was a really fresh perspective on him, his life, his career. And it just allows you to kind of really look at this time and this moment and what this moment meant to him and his career and all of that. And I think that they did very well. So I highly recommend it. I mean, the documentary is good.
Yeah, it is. And it's on Netflix. It's like one of the top documentaries.
No, it is? Okay. Well, that's
good. Number 2 or something. So it is good. People are enjoying it. So.
All right. Wow. Whew. All right. Well, if you are still here and you enjoy our podcast, thank you so much for being here. There's lots of different ways to support us. You can write us a 5-star rating and review, or just the rating. It is always very helpful for us. Spread the word. Tell people about Psych Legal Pop. And subscribing to the show also helps us tremendously. We're here every Monday and Thursday. Thursdays, we do documentaries and other things. Mondays is Sister Wives. So if you're interested in Sister Wives, go check out our Monday show. And if you want even more from us, you can go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/PsychLegalPop podcast. We do a weekly bonus, an Ask Us Anything, a true crime, all that good stuff. So you can go check us out there and follow us on social media at PsychLegalPop on TikTok and Instagram. And I think that's it.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.